Okay, so there's going to be a bit for everybody, hopefully, in this talk, which will appeal, and I'm focusing on different aspects in my career, because I've had a pretty topsy-turvy career, and I'm currently in a place where I've been labelled as the Valley of Death, which I'm trying to dig myself out of, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. But I thought that all of you, irrespective of where you are in your research career, would recognise this pathway, where you start with your new concept, whatever it is, you go to confusion, then more confusion, frustration, hopelessness, epiphany, comprehension, accomplishment. Well, hey, we all want to be here, right? And then back to your new concept. And everyone goes around this pathway, and everyone spends time here. Don't feel like you're not. If you don't, then there's something not right with your science. Okay. How do I move this forward? Is it that way? Yeah. So I just want to tell you a little bit about me first. As Andrew said, I'm a clinician with a specialist interest in tropical medicine, imported infection, neurological infection particularly. And I finished my training in infectious disease and got my CCT last year. And I'm still a clinical lecturer because I've managed to obtain some ongoing internal funding because I had some interesting research concepts which are lasting me till August. I did my PhD in Malawi. I also want to tell you that I'm the mum to 2 small boys. I'm married to a full-time nephrologist, which means the clinicians in the audience will know what that means. But nephrologists are notoriously some of the busiest physicians in the hospital, and there's always a nightmare on the dialysis unit at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and they're never home on time to do the pickups. And I think to date, I'm the only clinical lecturer at UCL working flexibly, and I'm determined to find another one, and I'd love to meet another one. But one of the reasons for coming and giving these talks is to show you how actually, with everything that happens in science, you can still do this flexibly with small children. So going overseas for your PhD is a pretty hectic thing to do, but it was really fun. And I was lucky I had a portable, how did I do that? I had a portable partner who was very flexible, actually. He gave up his nephrology training to come. I've been in the tropics before, and it's a great research environment. It's exactly where I wanted to be. And I had a supervisor on site. And this is Liz Corbett, who's a Wellcome Trust Senior Fellow, who's based out there doing TB research. This is what she said to me when I came on my site visit. Good advice. If anyone's ever thinking about it, it's really good advice. I soon found out that the antenatal care was terrible, but actually here's Mark Walport, who came to open the new emergency department. And one of the things I found, I went out there pregnant, and the emergency department I wanted to do my trial in hadn't opened. So fortunately, I was fortunate that I was pregnant, because I could sit out on maternity leave and wait for Mark Walport to turn up and open it, which is why he's here, and then I could go back to work. Otherwise, I would have had to completely change my PhD, so it was very serendipitous, actually, that I was pregnant at that time. And here's me with my baby on Lake Malawi at the weekend. Okay, and this is what the trial showed. So these are the number of targets we set within our goals we set, and this is the compliance. And what we showed very nicely is in the goal-directed therapy group, you could achieve a lot more targets: early antibiotics, early disease recognition, resuscitation. But this is what happened. The patients who got the goal-directed therapy did worse. Really huge shock, really surprising finding. My plan at this point had been to get the data. This was a feasibility study to then apply to the Wellcome Trust for a couple of £1 million to do a multi-centre cluster randomised trial of goal-directed therapy across Southern Africa. That went straight in the bin. And I'd also felt terrible. I designed this care bundle, and my patients had, I not necessarily actively harmed them, but I certainly hadn't helped them. So goal-directed therapy may cause harm. What to do next? So I went back to the clinical trials. Here's a dexamethasone, which shows no effect in Malawi and across multiple trials. Hypothermia, brain cooling, which had been stopped early due to harm in France. That was a trial in France. There's another trial in Malawi that was done with glycerol to reduce intracranial pressure, stopped early due to harm. Here's my trial, harm. I was funded for my ACL post in 2014, but at this point I was pregnant again, so I deferred the start of that to 2016, and that was also to do with semantics around maternity leave and being employed by the NHS at that point. And this is the question I've been trying to answer. Does the host inflammatory response determine outcome from pneumococcal meningitis? And this is being funded by a starter grant from the Academy of Medical Sciences. And I've been working with these very friendly, lovely people, 2 of whom are based at UCL, Mike Levine's at Imperial, and Jerry and Rob are here at UCL. And along the way, I've had lots of support from these great mentors. And one thing you really need to survive whenever you fail, or to get you through a difficult patch, is your mentors. And these are I want to share some of the advice. So at the top is Sarah Rowland-Jones, who's a professor in Oxford. She says, make sure you pick up your kids 1 day a week, irrespective of their age, because that's when they're going to tell you things. If you don't do that, and they don't tell you things, then you're going to lose that link with their life. And everyone who I say that to who's got kids nods, because it's true, it's really true. You only hear it in the back of the car on the way home from school. This is Shivani, Always accept an invitation to talk because you never know who's in the audience. Also good advice, which is one of the reasons I'm here. And this is David, who's my PhD supervisor in Liverpool, who's now director of the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and a better PhD supervisor you couldn't find. And this is his advice. Trust your instincts. And that's really good advice in science. And it's advice from senior mentors like this who keep going, you're not doing badly, you might fail, but you're not doing badly. You've got to keep asking the questions and you've got to keep going. That really helps. So I started working flexibly in 2014, pregnant, sitting in my literally in my garden shed, writing my PhD. And I started working flexibly at that point. And this is the question I've been approaching. So as you outlined very nicely, there's this balance between the immune system and the pathogen. And where is the tipping point that tips you in meningitis into being a non-survivor or a survivor? And what I found out so far is that neutrophils are highly dysfunctional in this environment. IL-17 mediated inflammation drives tissue damage. And also I've discovered new bacterial genes that have no known function that are highly upregulated in meningitis. And that's what I'm working on at the moment. I've knocked those genes out and we're putting them into some models. I've also found out that bacterial proteins are overexpressed in non-survivors that are potentially sticking proteins in the CSF together and making outcomes worse. So where am I now? I'm in the valley of death. So I got some extra time and some extra funding to keep going with this work because there's nothing more frustrating than being on a fixed term funding contract and getting some exciting data and wanting to take it forward and not having the money. And when you ask the funders what you're going to do, they say, oh, we'll just go and locum. And I can make money locuming, but I can't do science while I'm locuming. So I was very lucky to get 6 months of money internally from UCL, supported by the Wellcome Trust. That's an ISSF fellowship, if anyone's in that stage. So I've been doing that. And I've been trying to find my niche. No one else is doing what I'm doing. Literally, nobody else in the world is doing what I'm doing. So I do have my own niche. I've been writing intermediate fellowship applications and writing my papers and trying to finish my experiments, all while working part-time with 2 small children. So it's pretty hectic at the moment, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with this environment, and also looking for a job, because I need a salary from September. But I see it as a valley of opportunity, not death. So my first intermediate fellowship to the Wellcome Trust got rejected this year. And the Wellcome Trust is running a scheme where they have the panel reviews all the applications and they don't send them out for review. So if someone on the panel just takes issue with your application, it goes in the bin and that's it, game over. I've also put into the MRC and they send out for review first and then the panel considers all the reviewers' comments, which I think is a longer but a fairer way to do it. Anyway, I can't be rude about the Wellcome Trust because I want to go back to them for more funding, but it is frustrating to have spent a year writing a proposal only for them to just send you a 1-line letter saying sorry. But you have to remember it's not personal. And you have to read all your comments and your feedback very carefully because that's going to help you get it next time with what I actually am doing now. So work out what they mean and is it feasible and does it fit with actually what you really want to do. And that's where I am at the moment. And then I'm going to go back to the funders for revised plans and starting to develop new ideas, different ways to take this forward. And I was just in a meeting last week in Germany and I specifically went to meet new collaborators to help me take this work forward when I'm potentially out of a job. They can keep going for me. And I'm keeping my eyes on the long-term prize, which is to go back to clinical trials. I want to take these data to develop a new intervention, new approach to these patients to reduce mortality from meningitis, and that's my long-term plan. And the CDF that I'm designing is designed to deliver a new intervention that's at the end of the 8-year CDF process to take back into a clinical trial. So I just wanted to finish on a little bit about resilience because lots has happened and I tried to draw a tube map. I went to a lovely talk with someone who drawn a tube map of the different career pathways and I tried to draw a tube map of my career pathway. It totally failed because it's too complicated. And everyone I think has been somewhere here trying to work out where your priorities are, which way you go. I showed you this already and along the science line you go along this way. Along the medical line you go along this way and you've got to try and link these two up. And along the way also you've got to have a life, you want to have a family, you go through loss and grief. So I'm very open about sharing the fact I lost my father to suicide 2 years ago. And that obviously has been a huge issue for myself and my family, but something that happens and happens to all of us. Sad, bad, awful things happen. You fail, as we've talked about. You've also got to deal with expectations of your own expectations of yourself, your supervisor's expectations, your family's expectations of you. There's lots of things you're juggling, and I don't want to sound particularly sexist, but particularly as women, there's a lot of extra expectations that come with being a mother that throw into the mix there. And there's this word resilience, and I feel that resilience sometimes can be a bit of victim blaming because a lot of the system is set up to fail. Not everyone will succeed. It's a pyramid. Not everybody can get to the top. And so are you lacking in resilience if you don't get to the top? I don't know, but I think that failure is almost built into the system. And so you need to be aware of that and accept that. 50% of women in science in America drop out after their postdoc, drop out of science. Only 10 to 20% of men drop out, 50% of women, and that's something we really need to address. And also, along the way, you've got to be happy. As you said, you've got to define your personal idea of what success is. You've also got to work out, is your job making you happy? I went to a talk by a neuroscientist who was publishing in Nature and doing amazing work. And she said to me, to work at this level, you have to work every weekend to publish at this level. And I said, okay, that's not okay for me. I would accept not pursuing that line because I don't want to give up all my weekends with my family so I can publish in Nature. That's my choice. Not that I'm going to get published in Nature, who knows. And you end up in a spaghetti junction if you're not careful, and you need a clear pathway, and that's where the mentors come in. So I just want to finish up by some advice that I got. So when I first gave this talk, I was seeking advice from different sources about what you would say to people who are embarking on a scientific career, working their way through to help them navigate it. And this is some really good advice from the Persisterhood, that's a Facebook group of academic research mums. And I asked them what they would say. So they said, learn early how to manage your career, speak up in meetings, that's actually incredibly important, be independent, advocate for yourself, work out your own research directions, learn how to communicate with others to improve your success, build a network of mentors, have clear expectations of supervisors, and discuss authorship early. All really useful bits of advice. And this is this is a nice paper that was in JAMA last year, no, 2017 now, and this is all different phenotypes of people doing PhDs who fail. And these are the things to avoid. These phenotypes, try and avoid being, the overcommitter. Don't say yes to everything because you can't succeed at everything. Don't be the lone wolf. Ask for help because you'll fail if you are the lone wolf. Don't be the backstabber. Steal someone else's results and publish them as your own. That won't win you any friends long term at all. Don't be a doormat either. Speak up for yourself. And don't be a vampire. Suck the blood and the energy and the data out of everybody else. And don't be the ghost. Don't hide away. And all of these phenotypes are built in people who are less confident, don't have enough self-belief, or have so-called imposter syndrome, don't feel like they're really there. And so they build these phenotypes to cover that up. I would say if you're considering or think you may have imposter syndrome, up to 50 to 90% of applicants to Harvard Business School, when asked anonymously, think they got in by accident. Okay, so it's a really ubiquitous, common thing, and I would just chuck it out the window. Every time any thought like that enters your head, just chuck it out. It doesn't mean anything. And then I'll just put you to this paper as well. 20 things was in Nature last year, 20 things I wish I'd known when I started my PhD. So lots of people to thank for all of this work, but I'd like to thank you for listening and happy to join in the discussion.